Hello and welcome. We're just going to get our meeting started now. So I'll call the Special Regional Council meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda?
My Mayor, if council wishes, we can have discussion regarding the caribou protection plan.
Okay, I'll ask for a vote if we approve the addition to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Souls, seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor of the addition? Carried. And the agenda is amended. Petitions, delegations. We have Jody Bloomer Caput, co-founder of Chief Business Development Officer, Canadian Fiber Optics, for a corporate update. So I'm going to ask for a resolution to move to a closed meeting pursuant to section 91J of the Community Charter. Information that's prohibited or information that if it was presented in the document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Can I get that motion? Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Souls. All those in favor? Carried, and we are in an in-camera meeting. I'll call the Special Regional Council meeting back to order again. Moving on the agenda, administration report number 86, Boreal Caribou Recovery and Protection Plan. Mrs. Thompson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just in follow-up to the regular regional council meeting that we had last night. We heard from Chris Cooper, the district manager with the Ministry of Forests and Lands here in Fort Nelson, who provided a presentation regarding the Boreal Caribou Recovery and Protection Plan. And following that meeting, Council determined that they wish to receive further information from staff. So I've prepared a report for your consideration today, and I understand that you haven't had a lot of time to review it. So I'll go through it in a bit of detail and also be considerate of the time. Excuse me, Woodland Caribou, is a boreal population locally referred to as Boreal Caribou, are listed as threatened under the Federal Species at Risk Act and are provincially identified as red listed. So that's a species or an ecosystem that's at risk of being lost, extirpated, endangered, or threatened. So in accordance with Section 63 of the Species at Risk Act, the Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change has a legal responsibility to report every 180 days on how critical habitat is being restored and protected. So accordingly, the provincial government in British Columbia is also required to provide updates to the federal government on progress made towards the protection of that critical habitat. Despite a significant reduction in industrial activity within the past decade locally, Boreal caribou populations are decreasing in 4 of the 5 herds located within the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. So those herds include the Callander, Chinchaga, Max Hamish, Snake Saturday, and Westside Fort Nelson herds. So I'll just direct your attention to attachment number 1. This is information that we received from the Ministry of Forests and Lands BC Caribou Recovery Program on December 8th, 2021. And it provides some information on page 4 regarding the current state of the Boreal caribou herds located within the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. So you can see about halfway down, the Boreal caribou herds are identified, and all but 1 are actually decreasing according to the current trend. So essentially, it just again confirms the importance of the implementation of a Boreal caribou recovery and protection plan. There's a bit of background in the admin report just regarding the Northern Rockies involvement in the Boreal caribou planning. So essentially in 2016, the province prepared a Boreal Caribou implementation plan, followed by a Boreal Caribou recovery implementation plan in 2017. The Northern Rockies provided comprehensive responses to both plans, most notably acknowledging the lack of consideration by the province of the socioeconomic impacts of the plan, and sequestered a study be completed titled The Economic Impact of Boreal Caribou Habitat Recovery Measures in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, and that was completed September 10th, 2018. Since 2019, Fort Nelson First Nation, the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, along with Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, have been working collaboratively on the development of scenarios that will support Boreal Caribou recovery within the regional municipality. The tripart committee is referred to as the Fort Nelson Caribou Steering Committee, and have worked together to develop various scenarios that are considerate of both Boreal Caribou habitat recovery, as well as potential impacts to resource-based industries such as forestry and oil and gas. Through the collaboration of the steering committee, 5 scenarios were developed over the past 2 years. The commonly accepted scenario, which was referred to as scenario 3, was further refined by Fort Nelson First Nation and provided to the Ministry of Forests and Lands in October of 2021. The Ministry of Forests and Lands then made some modifications to that plan, and then provided it to Northern Rockies for further comment. And that plan is referred to as scenario 3.25, which we heard about last night. An internal review was completed by staff at Northern Rockies to determine the extent of the deviation of this new scenario 3.25 from the commonly accepted scenario 3. And in doing so, we determined that the scenario 3.25 does not significantly differ from scenario 3, and that it would be appropriate to initiate public engagement using that scenario 3.25. Understanding that it is a draft plan and that any comments from the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality as well as the public would be incorporated or considered in the update of the plan. So essentially, it's recommended that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality is supportive of the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, initiating public engagement based on scenario 3.25 of the Boreal Caribou Recovery and Protection Plan. And again, that is a draft plan, and I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Thompson? I guess the only comment I would have, once again, the numbers that we were given yesterday are different than the numbers that I see here on the population estimates, but the population estimates here are from 2010. And they've got a little subnote here for section 5. And section 5 says, more recent surveys conducted, but population size could not be estimated. So they're unable to estimate the size of the population, yet they draw the conclusion that these numbers are decreasing. And I don't quite get the connection here about how they know the population is decreasing if they don't know the population size.
Right, and I believe that that was raised by yourself at the council meeting last night as well. And we did try to provide some information, but we can certainly request additional information to support those numbers if you like.
Yeah, anything that they can do to put some, what I question is their numbers. And I would just like a little assurance, I guess, that the numbers that they are working with and the conclusions that they're drawing are somewhere based in fact. Somewhere they have some rationale for this.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councillor Gerwin.
So I'll try to word this correctly, but it's been my experience that just because you're involved in a plan, when it's more than one agency, doesn't necessarily mean that the end result of the plan is something that you could support. So the recommendation as I'm reading it is that at this point in time, it's recommended that council approve the public engagement process moving forward, not necessarily approving of the plan. So I guess my question perhaps can't be answered today, but my question would be, having played a role in the creation of the plan, is it something that you believe would be doable in the municipality without great socioeconomic detriments? How's that?
Right. So based on the information that was provided last night in the report by Schlinor, there was numbers in there relating to impact to the annual allowable cut, for example, or the timber harvesting land base. So just taking those numbers at face value, they're pretty representative of what the ministry was anticipating at the beginning of the planning process. Would I recommend that, we're pretty adamant that we would like to see a socioeconomic impact assessment completed before the plan is presented to cabinet? I would strongly recommend that that's the case. But really, I mean, that could be something that council, if they so wish to, would be probably prudent to provide that in a resolution that you'd like to see that completed.
Well, I think that's what we talked about last night. Well, I won't say we, I'll just speak for myself, but definitely came up last night. And the answer that I think we got is that maybe is forthcoming, but personally, I would like to, if we are going to, council decides to move forward with recommending that it goes to the public engagement piece, I would like to see that included in our resolution, that at the same time it goes with a socio-economic plan, and additionally that we have, the municipality has time to review that plan prior to it going public.
So Councillor Gerwin, would you like to endorse the resolution adding on that part with the socioeconomic plan?
And before we move on to that, I'm just wondering how council feels about a predator management plan, because the answer that I feel I got last night is that that is way off into the future. That's not going to even be considered as the plan is presented for public engagement, that there will be no, I mean, obviously they're open for comments, but they're not even going to present a possible predator management plan in conjunction with this. And I think that that is a really a missed opportunity to get engagement from our community. Because like, why do it twice? Like, I just think that we know the people that are involved in the land, and we know how they feel about a predator. Well, know how many feel about a predator management plan. So I think, in my opinion, it would make sense to have that plan going out at the same time. So it's like it's a whole parcel of, it's not just we're going to reserve this land or we're going to diminish the annual allowable cut, or but that's what I feel anyways. I think that those two pieces need to be addressed before I could comfortably support it.
So personally, I understand that there's these moving parts, the socioeconomic plan and the predator plan, that we don't have. I think there's going to be an opportunity when they do their presentation for us to provide input, and that would be a good opportunity for us to tell them before we endorse their plan, we want to see a predator management plan. Any other thoughts? Councillor Souls.
Yeah, I think that it's a matter when the time comes to have, I think we have to get to the point where we have public engagement, but then we have to be committed as a council to have discussions around these things that we expect as to be part of the program moving forward. And we can also wear our private hats and give input privately, I believe, and I would like that very much. So I think this is a completely wrong-headed and completely misguided effort. And so the way that you deal with misguided efforts, this whole idea of land-based as though the habitat, by us leaving that habitat alone, will actually cause a recovery. I think that that's actually not true. And I think that the idea of starting out with a land-based perspective without dealing with things like predator control up front is an indicator that it's actually something to do with land management, not to do about caribou survival. It has way more to do with land management. And so even the science of the caribou and what they eat and how that, some of what I've read around that regarding our local caribou herds, I certainly would not hire any of the people who've written those reports to manage one day with my cows. The issue of how the caribou survive in this area and what they need for habitat, if that's all, we sit here and it's like that's a given. It's not supposed to be our area of expertise, and so we kind of let them tell us what the caribou need, except for some of us love animals and working with herds and so on. And the issues of caribou, they are all over the world. Species and subspecies are all over the boreal world. So there is a tremendous amount of knowledge of caribou and what they actually need in order to survive and to thrive and to multiply. And this, what we're looking at here in the whole planning system is ineffectual. The way that it gets rolled out as to things like forest industry and oil and gas industry is that to a large degree, the way that this will go, if it keeps going in this direction without addressing some of these things, is that there will be special measures that have to be taken, mostly paper records, but special measures that have to be taken for forest companies to log in certain areas, for oil and gas to harvest in certain areas. And we'll be doing our due diligence in doing so. And that is a way to keep industry moving forward. And I'm certain that that's part of the discussions in how this has to fit with a new industry that we're trying to get going. So I'm certain that that's part of the discussion. But the issue of the actual idea of preserving the caribou is not really, I just don't see how this will do much good in that regard at all. So those are the kind of things an individual person like myself can bring to the table when you have public engagement. Yeah, of course, I'm a farmer, so it's all right. You can just recognize that I do it from that angle. But know for sure that my perspective on that, I'm not alone in that. It's been fascinating for me to watch the gradual adaptation of this from a recognition that there's declining herds quite a number of years ago. And I've been in the bush around Fort Nelson, and I worked actively in it since 1978. And the instances of the interaction with caribou in any one of our harvesting areas anywhere, I worked logging out in the bush every day for years and years and years. And I can count on one hand the number of times that I've seen caribou in anything to do with any of the harvesting areas. We have these main harvesting areas around here. It's not to say that there aren't caribou, but it all doesn't add up to me. So I just think a whole land-based approach, the idea of habitat management and to the exclusion of other things is just wrong. Anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Penny, any thoughts?
I'm on similar on as Councillor Gerwig. I'm happy to see this get out for public engagement, but I'd want some stipulations in there that, you know, we want to see socioeconomic done, and also that predator management would be something that we'd want to see happen prior to it leave to go to the province. But other than that, I really like to get it out to the people, because I think they're gonna speak loudly about exactly what we're sitting here. I'm sure they are. I mean, that's exactly, he mentioned that they had the issues down south when they rolled out a plan, And that was one of the biggest issues they had, so I can't believe that it's not included. But anyway, I just want to make sure we get it out to the public as soon as we can, start hearing back.
Very well. Go ahead.
So the second recommendation is that the NRM not endorse the initiation of public engagement based on scenario 3.25 of the Boreal Caribou Recovery and Protection Plan, and that the NRM participate and provide feedback as a stakeholder. So would there be any negative effects if we took this decision? Like, what would that look like for us?
Right.
Ms. Thompson?
So that would be more along the lines of stepping back from the actual steering committee and just responding as like a regular stakeholder type thing. So we'd essentially give up our seat at the table, not to say that we can't respond and provide feedback as a stakeholder, because we certainly are. But we wouldn't want to step back and lose that seat at the table.
So and I have some words we could add on to based on our conversation. If you want me, I can share them.
Go ahead, Councillor Gerwin.
So it was like at the end of the third line, that we would be endorsing this once the socioeconomic and predator management plans are complete and shareable.
Very well. The seconder for Councillor Gerwin's motion. Seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And I'll declare this meeting adjourned if there's no further discussion. We are adjourned. Thank you.